We got Ryan Herrings on the line from Locked On Badgers to break down some Wisconsin football. Ryan, what's going on?
No, nothing. Just very grateful to be here as always, man. Get to talk some college football, and you're right. Huge weekend for Wisconsin with Bama coming into Camp Randall, so we are very excited for it.
I watched the Central Michigan game, and of course, Wisconsin trailed by a point, I believe, at one point in the fourth quarter. I think that was like a 14-13 game.
Mm-hmm.
They got the muffed punt, or let's not call it a muffed punt, because that would blame the kick returner. Of course, it was just one of those deals where they lost sight of the ball, track of the ball, kicks off somebody, and Wisconsin takes advantage. They put together 2 touchdown drives, skate on for the win. I did not see the game last weekend. Similar score where it looked fairly comfortable at some point in the second half, but not necessarily a runaway. So based on what you've seen the last 2 games, we've got the whole spread them out, speed and space narrative of what Wisconsin football is supposed to be. We still have remnants of run it first, ram it down your throats, and whatever Luke Fickell and Phil Longo want that to be, and that combination. So let's start on the offensive side and what you've seen so far.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on it. It feels very much like an identity crisis where they're still trying to figure out between what Wisconsin was, what Phil Longo traditionally has done with his air raid system. It doesn't feel like they fully figured it out. And I was talking about this the other day. It actually feels a little bit like a spread version of Paul Chryst, where like we're going to be methodical. They've had multiple 14, 15, 16 play drives. We're just going to take what the defense gives us. We're going to slowly march down the field. We're going to win time of possession. And this is historically not what Phil Longo has done. Even when he was running the ball really well at North Carolina, which he did, he was in the 50th time of possession type of a team. And Wisconsin right now is dominating time of possession, but they're not generating explosive plays. They're having a very hard time finding those explosive vertical shots. And that was an issue last year as well for Wisconsin. So it's tough to figure out exactly, are they saving a few things for this meat of the schedule? Did they just go into those 2 games and say, we can just lean on these teams and just kind of wear them down? I'm not sure. Phil Longo's talked about it. He had some interesting comments this week in media availability. Basically said fans should, and I'm paraphrasing, but fans should be happy with wins and not worry so much about kind of how the sausage is made, which big picture, that's fine. However, you're not going to be able to march methodically down the field, I don't think, against an Alabama, right? You're going to need to generate some plays that threaten their corners, that threaten their safeties. Otherwise, they're just going to put 8, 9 in the box. And at that point, you're not going to march down the field against a defense with those caliber of athletes. So inconsistent, feels like they're still looking for their identity. I think some of that is tied to Tyler Van Dyke, who has been okay, hasn't thrown an interception, but also hasn't done a lot to really make defenses pay for putting extra people into the box.
Yeah, it seems easy in this type of situation to say, well, if you rely on the short passing game, those guys should be open. And if you just dump off these 3-yard, 5-yard balls in the flat, a lot of bubble screens, a lot of motion to get guys free, bootlegs, dump it off to the tight, a lot of this short stuff that, hey, as long as you're completing the balls, even if they're tackling in space, you just move the ball down the field. But the longer the drive, the more likely it is that something's going to happen wrong. You commit a penalty, and then you're throwing in tight windows and spaces against elite athletes, and they start to read things and jump routes, pick passes off. You start to throw into coverage where there's going to be a tipped ball at the line of scrimmage or deflected pass broken up that's going to go somewhere where, again, Central Michigan players may not have the reaction time to get to it, but Alabama players will, and bad things start to happen if you're that predictable.
Yeah, I agree completely. There's a reason bend but don't break exists, right? There's a reason that term exists, because it is hard, especially at the college level. It's hard to methodically march down the field consistently against good teams. You said it. You're going to have an illegal formation. You're going to have a dropped pass. And then suddenly you're 2nd and 10. And if you haven't been able to generate those passes, Alabama's just going to tee off. So it's been a big discussion point for Wisconsin fans right now. Tyler Van Dyke, I think, is 15th in the conference in the Big Ten in yards per attempt. Listen, if you go out and get a Tyler Van Dyke, what's the scouting report on TVD? It's huge arm, right? The ability to push the ball vertically, big frame. It's not consistent dink and dunk, like we're going to be super efficient quarterback. That's not his game. That's not what he's ever been. So part of me just has a hard time thinking this is the plan, because otherwise, why are you getting the guy with the rocket arm? Why are you getting the guy who can theoretically push the ball down the field into windows Wisconsin traditionally hasn't been able to? So I think some of it, I do think there's an element of we've played two teams we can just kind of bully around a little bit. And that can bite you, right? That week one game, you mentioned it. They were down by 1 point in the third quarter. You got to be careful messing around. I think there's an element of they haven't thrown it all out there, but I also don't think, and I don't believe that teams just flip switches after 2 weeks, right? So I don't think you're going to see a brand new version. I think this is some version of what Wisconsin's going to be, hopefully with a little bit more ability to either through the run game or through the pass game to generate those explosive plays. But I think you're completely correct. You're not going to do that consistently against the better defenses.
And unfortunately, this is where schedule comes into play. And for Wisconsin, they've got one of the tougher ones in the country versus there can be some teams and will be some teams that we will review that could have the same offensive and defensive production as a Wisconsin, but meander their way through a schedule that has few landmines and have an impressive record because of it. But Wisconsin doesn't have that luxury. You've talked about the Tyler Van Dyke's arm strength. And yeah, he had an 8 or 9 game stretch at Miami in 2021, which was a long, long time ago now, where he looked as good as anybody, throwing up 350 a week and 3 and 4 touchdown passes. And the combination of injuries and Josh Gaddis's offense the next year, which was not good. I think a lot of things worked against him, but also his own decision-making, not the best. He threw a pass against Central Michigan where he was on the right hash, and he whipped this thing all the way across the field to the left sideline. And the announcers were raving about his arm talent. And of course, it was impressive. The corner just missed picking the ball off. And so he fitted into a tight window on a high risk, low reward kind of throw. But again, if you're out playing 7-on-7, it's impressive. But my thought was immediately don't throw that pass in a couple of weeks, because that Alabama corner will have, because the Central Michigan corner just missed it by that much. Don't be doing that in a couple of weeks, because it'll be going back the other way.
Yeah, I know exactly the play you're talking about. Is a throw to Trechka Kahuna, the redshirt freshman Badger fans are excited about. And I had the exact same thought. I was talking to my buddy. I'm like, that's a super risky throw. And my buddy said, no, it's just an NFL arm talent. And he's really sharp. And I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like that's a pick, not just against Bama. You mentioned in 2 weeks, Bama. That's a pick against Iowa. That's a pick against Penn State. That's a pick against Oregon. And you mentioned it too. It's a low risk throw. Even if you complete it, that doesn't break the back of the defense. He had another throw in that game where rolling out to the right sideline, tried to kind of thread it back, got tipped up. He hasn't thrown a pick, but there's been 2 or 3 passes where I think good secondaries probably make him pay. And which I got to be honest, that's, to me, there's a part of that that's okay, because that's the negative part of TVD that we had heard about, right? I came into the season expecting a couple of those throws with Tyler Van Dyke, because I've seen him the last couple of years. The problem is we're not seeing the other version of the Tyler Van Dyke that we thought we might be getting, where he's throwing, again, I keep going back to it and I'm beating a dead horse, but for a year and 2 games into the Phil Longo era, they have not been able to push the ball downfield or find explosive plays. So you can live with some of those risky throws if you're getting the benefits of also hitting some of those deeper passes. But when you're not getting that and you're getting some of the risky throws, it's a difficult winning proposition for Tyler Van Dyke. And in that case, if you're not getting the best of him, I just don't know what the upside of the offense is if you can't push the ball down the field.
Yeah, he had another throw in that game in the red zone where it looked like he just tried to throw the ball through 3 or 4 guys, and one of them deflected it and just hit the ground, and they just lost the down. But it was way too risky for that to be done. And there's a difference between doing that and having a one-on-one situation where you're throwing into coverage, but you're trusting your wideout to be the better player on a one-on-one situation, and you're hopefully throwing it in such a way that it's very unlikely that it's going to get picked versus what he tends to do from time to time. We got Ryan Herring on the line. You can catch his work. Ryan's at Locked On Badgers. Ryan, where's the best place to find what you've got going on this weekend? What do you have going on this week?
A lot of Alabama content. Talked to a couple of Alabama guys. Some more of that will come up on the channel. You can find everything we're doing over at Locked On Badgers or at Ryan and Bucky. Obviously, not many chances to get Bama on your home turf if you're a Big Ten school, right? So this is a huge, huge game for Wisconsin fans. We've circled it for a while. I think a lot of Badger fans are a little nervous, right? You want to have that spotlight, but you also don't. For years, I've said this before, it was kind of like Nebraska would have that spotlight. They would host Ohio State, and then the end of the game would be 41-10. Or, and so Badger fans are having a little nervous trepidation there, but it's a great week to be a Badger fan if you want to host one of the elite programs in college football. And we're all, like I said, we're excited. We are very excited. We're just trying to talk ourselves into the scenarios where Wisconsin maybe pulls the upset.
Nebraska has had that spotlight a few times here in the last 6-7 years since they've been down, where there might be a little fool's gold. Either it's so early in the season, their record's 2-0 against a couple of UTEPs, or one year they were 7-0 in 2016, and they went to Columbus, and there was a big deal made out of it, and it was 62-3 3 hours later. So, yeah, this edition may be a little bit better. Is there a Nebraska-Wisconsin game this year?
There is, and it's a road game for Wisconsin heading into Nebraska and heading into Omaha or Lincoln. Wisconsin has dominated that series since Nebraska came into the Big Ten. Wisconsin has absolutely dominated that series, but I got to be honest, he's still a freshman, and it's only 2 games. Raiola looks the part. He does some unique things as a quarterback, where looking to one side, then coming back against coverage, different arm angles. He looked really good against competition that's not great. I don't love Colorado, and UTEP is UTEP, but that's going to be a battle. I think Rules has done a great job rebuilding that. Their defensive line is really good, and I think the key part with Nebraska this year is their schedule is a runway, right? Their first 6-7 games are really pretty light, which allows a true freshman quarterback to build up steam. He's going to be able to ease into this year. So by the time Wisconsin gets him later in the year, you're not a true freshman anymore if you played 7-8 games. So that's a scary game for me. I really like what Matt Rule has done there.
As Ryan mentions, everyone, Bama visiting Big Ten country is super rare. There was a date at Penn State against Joe Paterno. That's how long ago it's been. That's the last time Alabama came to a Big Ten stadium. They had a home with Penn State in, must have been 2010 and 11. And they won like 24-3 at Penn State. So Bama, Wisconsin, of course, they got together in 2015 in Houston. Derrick Henry had a big day. Wisconsin was roughly in the game. They kind of scored, and they would get kind of close, and then Bama took it away in the fourth quarter. 35-17 comes to mind for that one. Ryan Herrings with Locked On Badgers. So let's go to the defense, Ryan. What's missing from vintage Wisconsin defenses that we saw for the last 30 years, most of the time, that were top 5 in the nation?
Yeah. And a couple of NFL defensive linemen. I mean, sometimes I think there's a lot of Badger fans who talk about scheme who have been frustrated. Wisconsin's playing a lot of a 2-4-5 with kind of 2 outside linebackers right at the line of scrimmage. And both Western Michigan and South Dakota have had success on the ground. They've been able to run the ball a little bit. Western Michigan has a good running back, Buckley, but it's a MAC school. South Dakota is a very good FCS school, but as an FCS school, we've been pushed around a little bit. Zone blocking schemes have washed us out. It hasn't always been pretty, but I don't think it's a scheme thing. That is where I was going with this. Badger fans would like to see more of a 3-3-5, maybe a 3-3 stack, put some more people at the line of scrimmage. Though you mentioned those great Badger defenses. They had Keanu Benton, who's now with the Steelers. They had Isaiah Loudermilk. They had Matt Henningsen. Those names may not be house, but they were all NFL draft picks. Those are all NFL guys on the defensive line. And you look at this version, this Badgers defense, and there just isn't an NFL defensive lineman. There's not a guy in the 2 deep that can, quite frankly, hold the point of attack consistently. So when those guys get washed out, then the linebacker group for Wisconsin, which I think is pretty good, it just gets mauled by offensive linemen because the defensive linemen aren't there to hold the point of attack. So I think it's as simple as that. I mean, the old saying, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes. Wisconsin just doesn't have enough on the defensive line right now to kind of not even stalemate offenses. They're not even forget getting penetration. They're just getting pushed off the line of scrimmage. So it's really hard to win college football games if you can't hold up in the trenches.
Jimmy's and Joe's, Ryan, have we seen enough of Luke Fickell's recruiting machine at Wisconsin to make an evaluation of how much of an upgrade that's going to be?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that have been the most positive development. If we're talking about the Paul Chryst era and the first couple years of the Luke Fickell era, I think this one is the one you look at and you say, we love where that's going. You're not going to see it right away, right? Because those players have to mature. They're freshmen and redshirt freshmen at this point. But Wisconsin has done a excellent job actually revamping their recruiting staff, landing one of the best classes they landed in Wisconsin history last year. A couple of those true freshmen are already getting on the field. Xavier Lucas is a potential star cornerback down from Florida. They pulled him from Miami. They wanted him. So the recruiting has been really good. They've won a lot of battles. They've upgraded the offensive line, cornerback spots. But the problem is those players take a couple years, right? So I think if you're taking the long-term view of this, those guys in 2025, 2026 could form the backbone of a really good Badgers team. But in 2024, it's hard to rely on freshmen and redshirt freshmen. So I think there's a bit of a transition period still going on. There's a lot of Paul Chryst players on this team, a lot of really good Paul Chryst players. But I think you're still seeing that transition from the end of his era to Luke Fickell's era. But the recruiting itself has been, by Badger standards, again, we're not going to recruit at Oregon's level, Ohio State's level. But by Wisconsin standards, it's definitely seen an uptick from what Paul Chryst was and where he was at.
Bama, Wisconsin, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. where it counts there in Madison. So get up early and get geared up for this one. And the Badgers in the Big Ten trying to hold home turf against one of the best in college football. Ryan Herring's work there at Locked On Badgers. Please check out Ryan and everything he's got to offer there on Locked On. Ryan, appreciate you stopping by to break this one down for us.
Humbled to be on. Really appreciate it. And let's have a great weekend of football.